go to two of my guests together now. Kenny Deery joins me, CEO of the Galway Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also joined on the line by Owen Corrie as well. I'm going to go to Owen first off on this one today. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to go to Owen first. Owen, did this come as a surprise to you last night?
Not at all. It's been well telegraphed all through the last few weeks. I mean, in the typical Ryanair fashion, the basis at Cork and Shannon to close was something that they put up to the government, say, change your government policy on travel policy or this will happen. The reality was...
is this a political ruse, do you reckon, Owen? Or do they mean to do this?
Not really. They'd have been looking at demand, and certainly government policy contributed to the very low demand that we're looking at over winter. They'll know exactly how many people were booked in those flights. They will then say, how do we avoid losing as much money as we are losing on those flights? And one of the things that would have been, one of the things that airlines do not like is a lot of staff in an airport which is underperforming. And there are about 130 staff between Cork and Shannon. They have decided to close the two bases for winter, and I'm not sure how quickly those bases will be resuscitated. Will they be back for summer 2021? Because,
I mean, opening a base is a big deal, and in the past we can all remember going back 20 years, once Ryanair opened a base in a place, it does breathe life into that whole area. Closing a base is quite simple, but reopening it is going to be a challenge.
Yes, you're rehiring. I mean, they're looking at staff numbers anyway. In fact, the two Irish airlines have done very well with the number of staff that they've laid off. They've laid off much fewer. Now, obviously, there are huge separate wage concerns with both of them being cut to 30% of wages in some cases. But the staff layoff situation in Ireland is less than it has been aviation across Europe. What they are probably looking at is that if they're going to, do a clean layoff of a lot of staff, and there are about 95 cabin crew and 35 pilots here, closing two bases would do that. There are two aircraft in each of them. The way it works economically is a based aircraft is generally worth just over €1 million to the local economy. So both Cork and Shannon would be looking at a hit of about €2 million to the local economy this morning. There is also, it's a little bit confusing because the routes can still continue without a based aircraft. And certainly there's no question that Ryanair will be keeping based aircraft in Manchester, London and Liverpool, 3 of the routes served out of Shannon, for instance. So we could have a situation where we don't have based aircraft and we have some flights. That's really important because it's where Shannon is looking at the moment. Ryanair are the only show in town.
Stay with you if you can. I want to go to Kenny Deery, Chief Executive of Galway Chamber of Commerce. Kenny, again, I know you've been very much immersed in this from the very beginning.
Absolutely, and listen, I agree with most of what Owen has said there. This isn't and hasn't been a surprise. We had a call with the airport and the Regional Chamber Alliance fighting for supports for the airport yesterday evening. Ryanair made it very clear last month that they wanted this meeting in Brussels this week. They wanted the traffic light system to be adapted. What was approved was not what was proposed. There's a voluntary code on a country-by-country basis in terms of adhering to the traffic light system, and that really, I think, has been the final nail in terms of this story. The distinction between base aircraft and them continuing to operate from the airport, which at least will be welcome as a token, is base means that you have early morning and late evening. So for the business travellers of the region, base is critical that you get out early and you have the potential to get back late at night. Also for the hotels, the restaurant sector in the wider region, people come to stay, they'll stay close to the airport to get that early morning flight. So there's a very important distinction there, and really keep what we're seeing. And we've talked about this, and we really do need to build a good news story into every second time we talk. But what we have been talking about over the last while is bit by bit the unravelling of routes and connectivity from the west. And, I heard the interview with Minister Nocton. I know she's doing a huge amount of work along with Minister Ryan. But the announcement of the 10 million funding isn't going to solve the initial problems. Though welcome, that's for future capital funding, not anything to help the airports in this day with what they're looking at. And really and truly what's being called for at this stage is we need some sort of parallel support to try and stop the unravelling of connectivity from our regional airports. Because when we're talking down the road about investment in the West, jobs and vital connectivity, you can't talk about it if you're sending people. Remember that the figures going through Dublin Airport are colossal, 31 million versus 35 roughly on a national level last year. That's significant. An investment into the West is going to be harder to attract if it's the case that we don't have connectivity from the West. And really at this stage what is needed absolutely, and whatever exceptions have to be made, is government support to keep our western airports, both Ireland West in Knock and Shannon, afloat, surviving, until such time as a solution has been found for the pandemic and we can begin to try and rebuild the route connectivity from the West.
Well, I think we've got that commitment from Mayor Hildegard Naughton today, and again, because she's based in the West, I think she has a very good grasp of it. And Kenny, thanks for joining us. Just on back to you, I mean, I did say earlier on to the Minister and to the Mayors as well that, I mean, I checked flights to Spain at the weekend for going out on the 11th and coming back on the 18th. Out of Shannon. I can book them still today. So obviously, would they use a Spanish base perhaps to service Shannon, like you said, Liverpool and others?
Yes, they can use a Shannon base. They also can take the bookings up to 2 weeks in advance. So 2 weeks in advance, without a penalty by EU261, they can cancel the flight. The other thing they can do is bus. That has been a case with a lot of airlines where they've curtailed services. They've just checked you in Shannon and brought you to another airport, usually Dublin. It's a lot of the flights are still bookable. I mean, it's still 3 weekly flights to England are still bookable on the service. But to give an example, Knock would not have a based aircraft. Kerry does not have a based aircraft. They have had Spanish services through the summer in the good times because they've used Spanish-based aircraft. The issue of the base, as Kevin points out, it's really theoretical for a passenger, but it's very, very important for the local economy.
All right, thank you all for joining us on Corey, Kenny Deery, Michael Cupboard and James Charity and Hildegard Naughton on that.